Good evening and welcome. Benvenue e benvenuto. This program is being recorded. Audience members will be muted. Please type your questions for the speakers in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. I'd like to do a few thank yous first. First of all, to the Jewish Federation for sponsoring the 24th Sacramento Jewish Film Festival. I'd also like to thank co-sponsoring organizations, the Jewish French Film Festival that's coming up June 9th through the 11th. C'est vraiment fantastique. And the Sacramento Italian Cultural Society that offers all things Italian, language classes, cultural events, and travel opportunities. I would be remiss not to thank our dynamic festival director, Tevin, who's here tonight, and the many volunteers, including Sherry, who's receiving the questions audience members submit in the chat box, and Mary, who has admitted you into the chat. I'd also like to thank the technically adept folks at Elevant. Now, if you haven't watched the film Where Life Begins, not to worry. We are not going to review or reveal the internal and external challenges facing the characters in the movie, nor are we going to tell you their decisions. Rather, we'll enhance your viewing experience by expanding your understanding of the setting. The film opens with a group of Orthodox Jews from France. They've come to southern Italy to a citrus farm where they come every year to examine one by one the citron or the etrog, etrogim. Now, why would they travel all this distance every year to examine one by one these bumpy, oblong fruits that are yellow? That's one of the things we'll learn tonight. And I'm Christine, a festival volunteer who has the pleasure to introduce the perfect authorities to enlighten us on the Etrog's religious significance, history, and cultivation. First, Orthodox Rabbi Evan Rubin, who is the rabbi and spiritual leader at the Kenesset Israel Torah Center. In addition to teaching classes at his Sacramento synagogue, Rabbi Rubin teaches adult education classes at Mellon, Sacramento, which is affiliated with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and at the Jewish Federation of Sacramento. This musical New Jersey native began his career as a cantor in Toledo, Ohio. His mentor there encouraged him to become a rabbi, which he did. Our other speaker is farmer Greg Kirkpatrick of Lindcove Ranch. He is a fourth-generation citrus farmer. The Kirkpatrick's Ranch in California's Central Valley, south of Fresno, is the only ranch in the United States to commercially cultivate the Etrog. Farmer Greg, the eldest of John and Shirley Kirkpatrick's 3 children, also consults as a farmland conservation specialist. Just in terms of our program order, Rabbi Rubin will start by explaining the Etrog's religious significance and history. Then we'll watch Greg's dad, John, the elder Kirkpatrick, at their Lindcove Ranch. In Susie Wycheck's short video, Citron Growing on a California Farm. And I'm sad to say that the elder farmer Kirkpatrick passed away on Sunday. So we send best wishes to the family and wish them comfort in his memories. Farmer Kirkpatrick the Younger will describe the history of the Lindcove Ranch and the cultivation of the Etrogim. Our speakers will finish by responding to audience questions. Remember to type your questions at the bottom of your screen in the chat box. Rabbi Rubin, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the beautiful introduction. And by the way, I happen to speak to my mentor today. In fact, we still communicate regularly now that he is retired in Israel and enjoying life there. Anyway, The Etrog is our topic for the evening. The Etrog actually goes back to the very beginning of world history. So there are varying opinions as to what exactly was on the fruit of the tree of knowledge that was eaten by Adam and Eve, causing their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And figs is discussed. Of course, we know the famous apple idea. We have stalks of wheat is another opinion. The Midrash tells us that the fruit that was on the tree of knowledge was an etrog. So we have at least one opinion that states that the etrog is all the way back to the beginning and has significance all the way back to the beginning of time. Of course, as the generations go on, it's 10 generations from Adam to Noah, which then is the flood, another 10 generations to Abraham, which begins the Jewish people. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's children are the ones that go to Egypt. There's then hundreds of years of slavery. And at the conclusion of the slavery, following the Exodus, with the giving of the Torah at Sinai, a little over 3,000 years ago now, we have the commandments given to us in the Torah, which include all of the holidays and all of the celebrations of the holidays. So we have in the fall harvest holiday season, the commandment that on the first day of the harvest holiday, that of Sukkot, which occurs on the 15th day of the 7th month, that we now know as Tishrei, we should take the fruit of the beautiful tree, as it is referred to in the Torah. The fruit of the beautiful tree. Why is it called the beautiful tree? Now, I'm going to need Farmer Kirkpatrick to confirm this for me. But one of the things that's talked about in the commentaries is that the thing that makes the tree beautiful is that the same taste that you would get if you were to eat the tree would be the taste you would get if you ate the fruit. So essentially what it's saying is the etrog and the tree itself bear the same taste. Farmer, is that a correct statement?
Yeah, probably so. The essential oils in the leaves are very similar to the essential oils in the skin of the fruit, and therefore the taste, which is largely derived from the skin of the etrog, would be the same. Very
good. Appreciate the validation, because that is not something that is part of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, you may be going to this, but it also is the fruit that never falls from the tree.
Very good. Thank you. And so along with the fruit of the beautiful tree, as we know, is the etrog, we also have the palm branch, the date palm branch, known as a lulav. We have the myrtle branch, known as the hadas, and the willow branch, known as the arava. These are the willows of the valley, which are actually from a bush and not from a tree. So they look a little bit different than the leaves of the tree. But nonetheless, the highlight here for our evening is the etrog. So we'll stick to the talking about the etrog. So when we take the etrog, we have to make sure that certain things are intact in the etrog. We want the fruit to be as beautiful as possible, what we refer to as hidur mitzvah, the beautification of the fulfillment of God's commandments. And so we want the etrog to look a certain way. Preferably, we're told according to halacha, to Jewish law, it should be oblong and not round. It should be thinner at the top, should be on the greener side of yellow as opposed to on the orange side of yellow. And if it has a pitum, the pitum is the little knob-looking thing that comes out of the top. It's actually the top of the etrog. If it has a pitum, the pitum should be intact. So here's one of my great stories about a pitum and an etrog that didn't end very well. I was about 16 years old, and the shipment of etrogim had come into the synagogue where I grew up in New Jersey. And I went that night, and along with my childhood rabbi, was poring over the table, finding just the etrog that I wanted for myself, which I did find. I was so proud of my choice. I put it in the box. I got it home. I went to show my father, and I pulled it out. and it came out with the pitum separated, still in the box. Boom. My beautiful etrog. Back to the synagogue to get another etrog. But we want the pitum to be intact, because when we're fulfilling God's commandments, especially those that are given us by the Torah, we want everything to be proper and perfect, if we can possibly do so. So on the first day, when we're fulfilling a biblical commandment to take the etrog, we must have everything intact. The rest of the days, 2 through 7, we have developed the practice of taking the etrog and the lulav and the other species every single day, and in recollection for what was done in the Holy Temple. But today's doing so is of rabbinic ordinance, and so therefore we don't have to be as strict with the condition of the etrog or any of the other species on days 2 through 7. So if something were to happen to your pitum in the middle of the holiday, you could still use it to fulfill the rabbinically ordained command. But when we're fulfilling the Torah's command, we want everything to be perfect. So the pitum must be intact. Now, if you want to avoid the problem, there are etrogim that are grown without a pitum. At times I choose to buy those to alleviate the stress. At times I choose to buy a pitum. It depends on my mood that particular year. I would encourage those with small children to buy one without a pitum if you can. That's always the classic dad's gonna get you for this moment in Jewish lore, is breaking the pitum off the etrog, God forbid, before it's ever been used. But this is a commandment that has traveled with us for over 3,000 years, since the beginning, since the giving of the Torah at Sinai. It has followed us from Israel to Babylonia, to the Roman dispersion, which has taken us anywhere and everywhere, to now, as evidenced by our panel, we have etrog growers in the state of California, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and we're very grateful to you, Farmer Kirkpatrick, and your family for your efforts in this endeavor. As the film talks about, this is just such an incredible mitzvah, such an incredible amount of work, to get us to this point. And we're very grateful to all of those in that line of work that make sure that we have all the things that we need to perform all these commandments and fulfill all these commandments in their proper manner. And so for that, we are grateful to the farmers who help us to fulfill that duty. So thank you again. And I think for my opening remarks, knowing we're running a little bit behind schedule, I will curtail there and leave the rest for the Q&A.
So I think now we're going to see the film of the Kirkpatrick Ranch, the Lindcove Ranch. They
have 5 varieties, and they are proprietary. We started them from seed that was imported lawfully from Israel, and all of the parentage of all of these trees was from seed, and we now propagate by making cuttings or air layers. All fruit is kosher unless it's spoiling or has insects in it. It's kosher for consumption. It has to have been grown in compliance with civil law, but it does not need to be certified by a rabbi if it's been grown in conformance with civil law. With the citron used for the holiday, it's important to the buyers to know that the fruit that they're getting is not harvested from a tree that has been grafted or budded, or descended from a tree that was grafted or budded, or descended from a tree that could have been budded or grafted, or may have been budded or grafted. And that's one of the functions of the rabbinical certification that we have. The other thing that is of concern is that the clone or the variety of the fruit is as represented, and that's the second function of the rabbi. Rabbi also is concerned about the laws of Orla. The laws of Orla require that the first fruits are the Lord's or Hashem's, and therefore the fruit that is produced during the first 3 years of growth cannot be used. That is also a concern to the rabbi, and he certifies us to the conformance with the laws of Orla. That which is blemished or doesn't qualify as to shape or color, or has lost the, we cut these off and leave a little piece of stem on them. If that falls out, it disqualifies the fruit. And a fruit that's disqualified for whatever reason is sold for culinary use in such places as Monterey Market and Berkeley Bowl in particular, and some of it also used in making high-end spirits.
Well, thank you. And Greg, if you could now explain how the Etrog came to your farm.
Well, about 37 years ago or something like that, a young Jewish kid from Lakewood, New Jersey called us and started talking to my dad about it and described the fruit and what was required to grow it. And he found my dad's name in a phone book as a farm consultant. And they chatted for about an hour, and Dad says, I think we could try that, because he's always trying new things. Anyway, and so he said, we'll give it a shot. And so here we are today after all that time. It's been a very interesting process. One of the reasons that we talked about and Rabbi Rubin didn't talk about so much is that the fact that every 7 years we have the Shemitah, and the fruit from Israel or the trees from Israel cannot be produced or worked in any way to produce a crop. So in Israel, oftentimes the orchards are just opened up and people can go pick their etrog, but they're not usually, all the work that takes to get them to that perfect condition that we want doesn't happen, and the fruit is often, very poor grades, not even kosher sometimes for the mitzvah. So anyway, that was one of the interests in getting started here. So because areas outside like Israel, or outside of Israel, like Italy, where we see in the movie, and Morocco and other countries outside of Eretz Israel, can grow during the Shemitah year. And so that's a year that we obviously have no competition from Israel. We grow a very high-end quality piece that is sold by appointment. And that's very nice not to have that competition. We just finished the Shemitah year, by the way, last year.
Well, many farmers have tried to grow Etrog, but most have failed. Why is that?
Well, halakhic law primarily. It's difficult, and then on top of that, so there are two issues really. It's the following the halakhic law, again, an ungrafted tree. So you can't use the standard citrus tree that would come from a nursery where they graft onto a disease-resistant rootstock, particularly to Phytophthora, a form of root fungus. And citron trees are very susceptible to Phytophthora. So we have to wrestle with that issue. We have to wait for the Orla period, the 3 years, and just the constant supervision of producing a quality piece of fruit is extremely difficult. And so we've watched now 14 attempts that we can count. We want to keep track of this, of course, because we also want to maintain the integrity of our fruit. So there's a rumor out there that says that California fruit, it's grafted. It's not a fruit of integrity from some other orchard that's not ours. It could damage our reputation as well. So we've kept track of 14 attempts and failures over the years, just for a variety of reasons. But mainly it's the amount of time and effort that really takes to produce a quality etrog.
And I understand they're more fragile than most citrus.
The fruit itself isn't. The fruit's pretty hardy, actually.
Okay.
But once you get that skin to condition a little bit after harvest, but in the meantime, out on the tree, big part of the problem is the trees are incredibly thorny. 1.5 inch thorn is not uncommon, and we have to work with that, and we also have to protect the fruit from that right from the very start. So we're taking individual flowers and tying them to a trellis so that they're not getting thorn scars or any other scarring throughout the process. And then other issues, of course, are insects and insect damage and protecting them from that. We have a whole host of pests that we monitor for. Fortunately, I try to practice a very deep form of integrated pest management, IPM, and I can get away with spraying my fruit maybe once or twice a season in accordance with California law. So yes, our fruit is edible, and if anybody wants to ask, I would not say the same about any fruit coming from Israel. Because they spray it 3 times a week.
And it's pretty labor intensive too, right?
Very. I have a crew about, increasing a little bit over the years, but we started with one employee doing it, Jesus Serrano, who just retired this year after 37 years with us. And so Jesus did it for a long time by himself. We have about 8 employees out in the Pardis from April through October. Again, just trimming those fruits, moving them around on the trellis so that they're not getting bumped. And then also checking their shapes and their size. And we probably eliminate about 80% of the crop or the fruit that's available on the tree just during that time. If it's not in good shape, has some kind of damage, we just cut it off through that growing process. So when they get big enough to actually observe that, they'll be removed.
And Rabbi, I understand that you, in the course of your lifetime, you've celebrated Sukkot in a number of different fashions. And I was wondering if you could describe that and the pros and cons of different settings.
So what I'll talk about in that regard really isn't about an etrog, though. It's more about the sukkah. So in addition to the 4 species that we talked about earlier, the main mitzvah of Sukkot is eating in a temporary hut, which we do to remember that this is what our ancestors did when they traveled through the desert, getting from Egypt to the Promised Land. And so we build these temporary huts, many of us in our backyards, so that we can fulfill this obligation. In the community where I grew up, I was mostly apartment buildings. So there was no such thing as building a sukkah in your backyard because there's no such thing as a backyard. And so we, as a young child, I remember eating in the synagogue sukkah in New Jersey. Then as I got to Ohio, it's a different scenario altogether. So there was able to build a sukkah in the backyard and had our own family sukkah, which was a very, very special thing. And it's special not just because it's your own, but you build it yourself. Whether you're building a click sukkah, which is basically a jigsaw puzzle of a kit, I'll call it, or you're really taking Well, I remember my childhood rabbi had pressed wood panels that we would carry and hook together and so forth and so on. So no matter how complicated your building is or how simple your building is, you still have to put it up yourself. And that's that can be a nice family bonding experience. And then you sit in what you've created, which has its own level of joy in it. And of course, having lived in the Northeast and the Upper Midwest, I've also had the privilege and pleasure, I say that with a little bit of a tongue in cheek, about dealing with weather on Sukkot. We would joke about, in the when the holiday comes quote unquote early, we have to worry about heat and the bees, and when the holiday comes late, we have to worry about the possibility of snow, and always the possibility of rain, which can impede the ability to eat in a sukkah. So it's always it comes with its interesting challenges, so Sukkot always, it's a pleasurable experience. It's referred to as Man Simchasenu, the time of our joy. It follows Yom Kippur. We've been given a fresh slate. That's what we are trained to believe. And now we are rejoicing in that by going outside and being, quote unquote, close to God in his elements, and just being, one with, in a certain sense, one with nature, and just enjoying ourselves in what is truly important, which is, our families, our celebrations, our relationship with God. And that's really what Sukkot is all about.
And the part where in the ceremony where you're waving the Etrog and the lulav in each direction, east, west, north, south, up and down, is that sort of indicating that God is everywhere?
That is correct. God is on all sides of us and surrounding us at all times. That's also part of the symbolism of the Sukkah as well, that God is on all sides of us. The other component of the Sukkah is not only does it represent the tents that our ancestors built, but also the clouds of glory that surrounded us as we traveled through the desert that protected us from the elements. So yes, we are always cognizant of the fact that God is everywhere, and that is part of the celebration and the usage of the Etrog and the other species as well. Yes.
Well, Sherry, let me turn it over to you, and you've probably received some questions that you'd like to ask our guests.
I have one fresh question here, and what is your average number of etrogim each year that are usable for halakhic purposes?
I think that's probably directed towards me. It's always hard to say, and I would just say that we never measure it in numbers or percentages. It's what God blesses us with, and because much of it, will be, you'll actually find something that you didn't see for the entire season. A beautiful piece will just come popping out from under some of the foliage somewhere, and so. We don't really keep track of numbers that way, but I would say this, that well over half the crop is taken off the tree before we reach the harvest season for this rogan, which generally begins about the mid to end of July, and then we'll be starting to accumulate fruit there up until the holiday itself, and we'll make a last shipment of fruit to New Jersey. Usually, will arrive a day after Yom Kippur, so there's just that couple days left before the start of the season, of the holiday. One thing I think I'd comment on, if I could, since I have the mic right now, I guess, one of the other parts of Sukkot, the tradition of Sukkot, that I really like is the fact that the four species are all associated with water. And so we have the palm, the lulav, the myrtle, and certainly the willow branch is associated with water, and the etrog as well. And these were all found in ancient oases. And so, and many of them, like the almost wild fruit that grows in Morocco these days, are in these mountain oases in the Atlas Mountains. And so, as they were traveling through the desert and coming to find Eretz Israel, my understanding is that the blessing is really a thanksgiving for deliverance as well from the Exodus.
Thank you. You seem to really have a level of knowledge that's, beyond what some of us ourselves have. That's really, really fascinating. While you're not Jewish, do you feel a spiritual connection to the Etrog?
You have to. I don't know how you could do it and not understand that. And they talk about that a bit in the movie as well. There were so many things I related to with Elio following his father's tradition, that will come out if you haven't watched the movie yet. But yes, you become immersed in the lore of this as you do it for many years. And Rabbi Rubin, one of our associates, I guess would be the best way to prove it, Dr. David Wiseman, has written some books that try to tie this also together with Christian traditions. And so, yeah, you can't. And then one of my partners who was out of grading, we were talking about Tu B'Shvat, which is the blessing of the fruit that comes, it was just a few weeks ago at the beginning of the year. And he says, you know how many people are praying for you today? And I just, you can't help but feel the religious significance of it.
Feel free to put questions in the chat or raise your hands and we can take you off mute, but it's easier if you do put them in the chat. Here's a question for the rabbi. Could you explain halakhic law a little bit and how it pertains?
Can you focus that question a little? Halachic law. If I'm hearing your question correctly, and basically what I say is this: I'm not sure what the word religion means, and what I mean when I say that is this. For me, Judaism is an all-encompassing way of life. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is thank God for returning my soul. In fact, I did a Melton course on that earlier this term. The last thing I do at night is ask God to guard my visions and my dreams as I go to sleep. And everything in between, essentially, is in some way governed by Jewish law. There's some manner of halacha from how I, believe it or not, how I get dressed in the morning, what I do when I eat, even pertaining to something as banal as going to the bathroom. There are things related to Jewish law. And so for me, halacha is something that is the blueprint by which I live my life.
Back to Farmer Kirkpatrick. For someone in the Sacramento area who's looking to purchase a California-grown Lindcove Ranch Etrog, where do we go?
Well, we were talking about this and earlier when I was interviewing with Christine, and we usually, we attend the Sacramento area farmers markets, usually from mid-October until June or July, and then we get too involved in the Etrog season to be able to go up, and we're out of our winter citrus fruit as well. So we usually stop about then. This year, with my father's health issues and other issues going on at the ranch and all the rain that we've had, we did not make it back to farmers market in October like we normally do, and we will be back actually this weekend at the Sunday Central Farmers Market, which is the one that's now is usually under the Highway 50 freeway. I just talked to Dan this morning. Hopefully we'll be back there in May. but we're at Arden Fair right now, and I will bring some esrogim this weekend if anybody wants to purchase them. We're just finishing up the very last of the fruit that we picked from this season, and then we're getting ready, of course, to start the new one. We're gonna get all the fruit off the trees and get them finished pruning and be ready to really jump in and start at about Pesach time. That's when most traditional growers really begin to work the orchards. And so we'll be there this weekend on Sunday at Arden Fair. If you want to get them for the holiday, talk to your local rabbi. I do probably 4 or 5 communities around California that order directly through us for the holiday, and would be happy to add somebody in for that. We try not to do individual mail. There's just too much for us to try to cover during the season. But there's somebody who bought Rabbi Rubin's mail order business, and I'm not sure which one it is, but one of the mail order companies actually represents and sells our fruit.
Is there any particular reason why there are so few, that you're the only farmer that produces these?
Well, it just takes an enormous amount of perseverance. I would say our first 15 years at least to 20 years, we didn't produce many fruit that were even kosher. And we'd always kind of look at ourselves at the end. I didn't tend a lot of these. My dad and our original partner would sit around and say, well, what do we do? We lost money again. And we'd always just kind of roll the dice. We're good, optimistic farmers, and say, we'll try it one more time. Finally, we've come up with a formula that seems to work, and have a great marketer in Yaakov Shlomo Rothberg in Etrog, California. We've branded it, and that seems to all be paying off now, and we're actually, have a viable business out of it.
And just got a question here from Baruch Bernstein. Much has been said about the idea that grafting makes the fruit pasul. What is the specific prohibition, since grafting onto rootstock doesn't create a hybrid fruit?
Oh, the rabbi take that one. That's a good question.
I was going to say, I was going to defer to you. What have you been told? I guess my question is trying to understand the concept of grafting. I know that there is a prohibition against mixing of seeds, but when you talk about grafting, what are you referring to?
Well, I think that's it. It's a mixing of races. So there's typically in the citrus industry or any fruit, I would say commercial fruit operation, stone fruit, you name it. There are all these root diseases, fungal diseases that you have that we've developed rootstocks that are resistant to those diseases. So you plant that in the ground, and then you take a scion of a bud of the tree that you want to put on it, and you graft it onto that, and the tree that grows from that then is the tree that you grafted onto the rootstock. And so it is seen as a mixing of species. And oftentimes it would be because the rootstocks are often sour orange or lemon or something else that is not a citron.
Okay.
So that would be it. And again, these things are not always practiced. The street is certainly not practiced in Israel by commercial growers, but the Orthodox who grow esrogim certainly observe that.
Very good, thank you. Because again, you're far more aware of the laws of farming because of what you do than I am, even as a rabbi, because this is not something I oversee very often. So
yeah, and our rabbi, he gives us our kashrus, our certificate, and it's right on every one of our boxes. It's just, his name is Rabbi Abraham Teichman. He ran Kalila Kosher for many years, and he's backed away from that and still doing a few clients like us. Has just been a wealth of knowledge. He followed the feedback that we brought back from Israel when we started, and he's been working with us now for over 30 years. And like everybody else that we started with, we're starting to lose them. Jesus retired, my dad passed away, Rabbi Teichmann is well into his 80s. And so, it's a passing in the guard that's going on for sure.
I understand.
Okay, here's a question for the Rabbi. Why do some Jews refer to the citron as Etrog while others call it Esrog?
Okay, so now we're into more a discussion of Hebrew. And so in the course of the dispersions, we've had, well, actually, this is in the aftermath of the Roman dispersion. We had the Jews kind of gravitated all over the world. And the ones that wound up in the Christian world became known as Ashkenazim. Ashkenaz is the Hebrew for Germany. So that was kind of their first stop, and then they dispersed further from there. Which is why, by the way, names like Goldstein and Goldberg become known as Jewish names, because as they travel from Germany to other places, they get identified as Jewish, even though they're truly German. And the Ashkenazim developed a system of pronunciation, which had the letter Tav without a dot pronounced as like an S in English. And so thus the word Esrog. The Sfaradim, Sfarad is the Hebrew for Spain, speaks of the Jews that wound up in the Caliphate, and their pronunciation of the Tav without a dot sounds more like a T, at least according to modern perception. That wasn't always so, but anyway, it's so Etrog. So that's how you get to two different pronunciations of the same fruit.
Okay. And we have another question here. This is from Laura Bernstein. How many Etrog clones do you have on your farm?
We have now, well, 5 main varieties, some offshoots and selections from we probably have 3 different Lefkowitz varieties that we describe as Hazanish. And we have, and then we're starting a new one. We actually brought some seed over from, well, an orchard in Israel that's growing Moroccan fruit. So we have Moroccan, we have Taimani, which is very interesting because those came from the dooryards of the diaspora of Yemen and have been brought back to Israel and recultivated there now. We have Braverman, and then what we call the Ashkenazi varieties. We have Braverman, we have Hazanish, again, several selections, or Lefkowitz fruit, and then we have Kivalevitz, where they're one of the only growers in the world still, even in Israel, of that variety, because it's very difficult to grow and get to size up in time, and for the holiday. And then one more, Halpern, which is a very beautiful piece when they really look right, and it's extreme, the right kind of bumps and grooves and tear shape or candle shape that you want, and when it's all good, they're amazing. But most of the time they're a little bit off in their symmetry, and they're not amazing.
Thank you. Before I turn this back over to Christine, I want to mention that this film is available virtually through March 8th, and the link is on the chat. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back over to Christine.
Well, thank you, Sherry. And thank you so much for our wonderful speakers. I mean, I think everybody, whether you've seen the film or not, has learned something in the course of this discussion. And we couldn't have asked for better authorities. So thank you so much. And I wish you well. And if you haven't seen Where Life Begins, please do. And while you're at it, you can check out the other opportunities for film viewing during our festival, which goes through the 21st of this month.
I'd like to just add, I watched I only had time to see a little over half the movie this afternoon, but almost everywhere from the very opening scene, the world of citron culture in Italy is very similar to what we do here, and the traditions of the families coming to pick the fruit. We have a good friend in Los Angeles who travels to Italy every summer still to select for the Chabad. And he's there all summer long, living that traditional life, and just watch it for that alone, and you can maybe appreciate a lot of what we do through watching that.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you so much, and I wish you all well and have a wonderful evening.